Welcome to this week's Rider Support.
This week we're going to talk about Mathieu van der Poel's bunny hop up onto the sidewalk and should he have been disqualified. We're going to talk about how to choose your perfect cadence. Not as easy as you'd think. But first, I want to talk about the biggest mistakes people have made on climbs and how you can fix those. Sarah, question one, what have you got for me?
Okay, Anthony, I've been struggling on climbs lately and I feel like I'm not improving. My weight is part of the issue, but I just feel like I have no strategy when it comes to climbing and get dropped every time by guys I know I'm at least equally fit to. What are the biggest mistakes cyclists make on climbs, and how can I correct them to get faster and more efficient on those tough ascents? And that's from Ronan.
Everyone wants to break climbing down as it's just a power to weight ratio. And it is just a power to weight ratio, but it's also not, because that's an oversimplification of the process. It's like add more power, be lighter. Okay, fine. But is there anything else outside those two things you can do to get a little bit faster? I think one of them is like the pacing. I'm talking a lot with time trial experts recently. And if you're doing a 10-mile time trial, if you pace the 10-mile time trial wrong, you're not going to get your best time. You need to approach a climb the exact same way. It's like, how can you get from point A being the bottom to point B, the top, in the fastest time possible? And that's most likely going to be a linear pacing strategy. So it's just as hard at the bottom as it is at the top. Do you remember one of the first times we went out cycling? We were in Kinsale down in the south of Ireland. And you approached a climb, like you hadn't got a power meter, you didn't know anything about power, but you literally rode the first 10 seconds of the climb at 800 watts. And then the next 5 minutes of the climb at
you had to push me
12 watts.
You had to push me. My bike was going to topple over if you didn't kind of give me a little bit of a push up. But yeah, I had no clue about pacing or how to maintain a sustainable effort throughout the whole thing. That's so important, isn't it? And a couple of summers ago, I was leading a group of newbies, and like that, it was just they would completely attack any little rise, 1,000 watts at the bottom, and blow their lights then by the time they got even halfway up the rise or the climb. So it's something a lot of people get wrong.
And there's a few ways you can do it. You can do like where you learn the hard way, where you experience, you start figuring out our local climbs roughly 10 minutes. So I kind of know if I want to do a full gas effort on that, how to pace that 10-minute effort. But if you're more advanced, you will have a heart rate monitor. You'll go, okay, I know if I'm at 180 beats inside the first 2-3 minutes of this 10-minute climb, I'm in trouble over the top. So you start to pace it off your heart rate. And then probably the most advanced way is pacing it off a power meter. You'll know what power you can put out for 10 minutes, and that's going to get you there. Some of the other stuff, though, that people fall down on is gear choice. You can have power nailed, you can have pacing nailed, but if you're overworking your muscular system, you're still going to lock up at some point. Like if you're training 95% of your time in an optimum cadence of 75 to 85, and then you hit a climb and your cadence drops to 55, it's really difficult. I do occasionally strength efforts out of coach Alan Davis, Australian, won Milan San Remo, used to call them strengthies.
Yeah.
So do strengthies where it's like an 8-minute effort at 50 cadence in zone 3. That's a super hard effort at a low cadence. So the lower cadence has a different physical toll on the body as well. So like anticipating the gradient changes and having appropriate gear selection for those gradient changes is going to mean you're not getting over geared for any parts of it. Like, I think if you can get a cadence out of you in the north of 75 range, it's normally kind of optimum. You know, the higher, the better, probably up to a ceiling of 95.
Hard on a climb. I find that really difficult, particularly with my gearing ratio on the bike at the moment, that to keep those really high cadence on a climb, I feel it's almost impossible. I'm grinding the whole way up. So that could be something to look at as well if you want to make your climbing a bit more comfortable. Last week I unfortunately had the misfortune of bringing my gravel bike out on the Roadman spin. Tough day at the office. But I do always find on my gravel bike, because I've got more options of easier gears when I'm climbing, that I'm spinning the legs way more comfortably, and it does help. So definitely something to look at.
There's a mental approach to climbing as well. I think people a lot of time focus on how overwhelming the climb is, instead of breaking it into smaller, more manageable chunks and saying, okay, I'm going to get through this first 500 meters, I'm going to get through the second 500 meters. They're just so daunted by the totality of it. They keep worrying about how much is left and they don't get into a rhythm on the climb. So I think it's more important to focus on the rhythm you're in rather than how far it is to the top.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm climbing, I will just pick a tree that's 100 meters away and be like, okay, just get there and then see how you feel after you get there. If I'm really, really struggling, that's kind of what I'll do. What I will say on the mental approach side of it is you do have to dig deep, and I've found this since I've kind of really been knuckling down on my training over the last couple of weeks, is that I'm probably have more in the tank than I think I do, and I'm almost afraid to push myself beyond a certain limit. And people do kind of put these self limiters on themselves, particularly when they're climbing, because they think, oh, my heart rate's at 175, this is scary, I'm going to blow, I feel awful, I'm not used to this. But you do kind of have to push through, and
which also really don't need to ride every climb full gas, Sarah. Like, this is something people fall into, and you fall into this a little bit on occasion, where you think you need to ride every climb in zone 4. You can ride up a climb zone 2 as well. You just need to, that stuff, pace yourself, use your gears, keep focus on your heart rate and on your power. Like, the part as well that people do miss is you can train specifically for a climb. If there's a climb, like we do basically the same route every week on the Roadman spin, and if there's a climb in particular that you were struggling on, that you could, in the exact same way someone would prepare for, if I was coaching an athlete and they said they're getting ready for a cyclocross race or a hill climb or criterium championships, you could deconstruct what the climb actually is. Okay, it's a 6-minute effort, what type of gradients, what type of cadence, and train that specifically. I think that's a good way to approach it if you're using the same climb all the time.
Yeah, if you're using the same route all of the time. Yeah, there's loads of stuff you can do. There's nothing really that you can do in regards to drafting, is there, on climbs? It's more a psychological
thing. You're going
thing,
too slow, I think, for it to matter. Drafting, if it's a fast, bigger incline, like north of 25 kilometers an hour, maybe there's a drafting effect. There's a mental component, but it swings both ways. I think it's nice sometimes to be setting your own pace versus following as well. Transform your indoor cycling with Rouvy, the platform that brings real-world routes and augmented reality to your training. Whether you're preparing for a big event or you're just looking to explore, Rouvy lets you experience legendary rides like Alpe d'Huez and Passo di Stelvio from the comfort of your home. Rouvy's unique augmented reality technology uses real-life video and GPS data to create the most realistic cycling experience available. You'll feel every climb, descent and turn with precise terrain replication, giving you an authentic outdoor ride indoors. Plus, with AR elements like avatars and banners, the ride really feels totally immersive and interactive. With over 1,500 routes and 25,000 kilometers, the world's most iconic cycling destinations, Rouvy is perfect for cyclists of all levels. Whether you want to enjoy scenic routes, participate in group rides, or push your limits with advanced training plans, Rouvy has you covered. Rouvy also offers flexible pricing, allowing you to pause your subscription or choose duo or group plans to share the experience. From exploring new places to serious training, Rouvy has something for every cyclist. Ready to ride the world? Visit rouvy.com and start your journey today.
Best of luck. Climbing is one of those, it's an art. It's definitely a dark science, I think. Okay, next question. Anthony, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one. Should Mathieu van der Poel have been kicked out of the World Championship race at the weekend? He blatantly hopped onto a curb and was very close to hitting a spectator. What I actually couldn't believe was that the camera kept replaying it like it was some feat of bike handling and that it should be admired. While I'm sure Mathieu van der Poel was pretty confident that he wouldn't hit that spectator as his bike skills are crazy, isn't this something we should be clamping down on in pro racing? It's a dangerous enough sport as it is.
It's against the rules is the short answer to it. There is a rule that says it's UCI rule 2.12.007. A rider jumping onto a sidewalk or endangering the public or other riders must be disqualified immediately. And there is precedent for riders getting disqualified for this before. Luke Rowe, if you think all the way back to Ron van Vlaanderen, 2018 was disqualified. And Marlon Roster was disqualified in 2024 Ghent Velligum. So it does happen. Now, the question is, are you going to disqualify the reigning world champion out of the chase group with 20 kilometers to go in the World Championships? It's a big call from a commissar.
It's a huge call. I think, so we did see that the Latvian Cycling Federation wrote an open letter to the UCI complaining that this had happened. And in that letter, they did say it's from Sandis Akis, who's the president of the Latvian Cycling Federation. So after the race, they went up to the commissar, the UCI commissar, and made a very public complaint that this had happened, and it had obviously quite literally happened. And was told, it said in the letter, the commissar argued that it wouldn't be good for the sport and that they get to interpret the rules as they see fit. But
maybe there is I haven't read the whole UCI set of rules. Maybe there is another rule in there that like all these rules are subject to what is the good of the sport. And then that's a separate argument. Is there an argument that keeping Mathieu van der Poel in the race is for the good? I would have been good. Every spectator, apart from maybe the Latvians, would have been good. Like Tom Squeens came fourth, and that's the problem here, that he's just out of medals by Van der Poel. But you can't disqualify him retrospectively. It happens instantly or it can't happen at all.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Because he impacts the race.
Nothing is going to happen here, but the rules do. I don't think that they get to be interpreted as per each commissar. I think that's really unfair. I mean, if you have a commissar who is Dutch, for instance, he's going to look at it completely different as an Irish commissar, because, you know, we were chatting during the race about all the times that Ben Healy was closed down because of moves by Mathieu van der Poel. So, you know, it does definitely affect the outcome of the race if somebody is breaking the rules and having an advantage. And the rule basically is that you can't go on the sidewalk, you can't endanger anybody, and of course that's allowed if it's, you know, if you're trying to avoid a crash or something like that, but that wasn't the instance in this case.
But like, the commissars are humans, they're fallible. Like, how hard was it to get a penalty at Old Trafford during the early 2000s when they were the best team in the world? Very hard.
The thing is that I think that these things are happening in the peloton in racing, and we're seeing riders, or this is happening, but we're not seeing it all the time. But this was just such an obvious one that we saw when it happened. And as I said, they kind of replayed it. I agree with this listener that they replayed it over and over and over again. And it was just a little bit shocking. I know that riders, you know, how much responsibility do riders have to put their best foot forward? You know, but there's young cyclists watching that, and
he's not thinking about that in the moment. He's boxed in, he's trying to close an attack.
Yeah, but Mathieu van der Poel was already in the rainbow jersey, and he has, you know, he has standards that he should keep, and I agree. At the time, I think he should have been disqualified.
Yeah, it's just the commissar is like, he has to act instantly on it, and
Agreed.
If you don't, you need some nerve to disqualify Van der Poel instantly there. Yeah. So I can totally see why he wasn't. I wouldn't have disqualified him. I wouldn't have had the nerve.
He didn't even get a fine for jumping on the curb, and that's usually about 200 to 1,000 euros. So he didn't get fined at all for that. So I don't know. It's one to watch. Okay, next question. Hi, Anthony and Sarah. Sarah brought up the cadence subject in a previous conversation, and I thought we would all benefit from opening up some important questions as to how to find the right cadence for me, how to maintain cadence during riding without seeing numbers on the display, and how cadences affect power retention over time. Also, is it correct to maintain a constant cadence even when on a mountain bike? Near my house, there is a single trail with lots of difficult and technical climbs and flowing or steep and technical descents. So is it necessary, and how to maintain cadence on such a tough course? So this actually question came in through YouTube. On our last rider support, we did touch on cadence, and there was a lot of questions and underneath that video around cadence. So it does seem to be something that flabbergasts people.
I think cadence varies from, when we speak about this, I'm really talking about road cadence, gravel cadence, pretty much gravel cadence, but it's mainly road cadence. I think it varies from rider to rider, but as a general guideline, it's going to be most efficient to ride in a cadence range of 85 to 95 RPM. That range is going to allow for good muscle efficiency without overloading your cardiovascular system. However, finding that cadence choice, it is very personal, and it's going to depend on your fitness level. People, when they're getting started, find it really difficult to maintain those cadence levels. It's going to also depend on the terrain. If you're on a super undulating terrain, it's very hard to pedal the downhills, and your cadence is naturally going to be lower on the uphill. So you're going to come home and maybe a little bit disappointed with your cadence. If you're on that rolling terrain, you can experiment with your cadence when you're out. Like, try pushing and having a goal to have a cadence that's slightly higher on a session, a goal to have a cadence that's slightly lower, and see what's most comfortable for you. A good indication of a suitable cadence for you is when you can maintain it over a long duration. If you can head out for an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour ride, and you're not forcing that cadence, I would call that self-selected cadence then. Maintaining it without a display is something I used to have to do before cadence. Cadence isn't like, that hasn't been around forever. You used to have these like really fidgety magnets, and you put one magnet on the inside of your pedal crank and another magnet on your frame, and it counted things going by. So I ended up just counting my cadence, how many times my left knee came up in a 15-second period, and then we'll multiply it by 4 to give me my rotations per minute. You can do like simple maths like that when you're out on the bike to know roughly what your cadence is without your display. And once you've done that a couple of times, you kind of know what it feels like to be in an 80 cadence or a 90 cadence or whatever. But gear selection, I think, is a huge part of it. Like, if you feel like your legs are slowing down, you likely need to shift down to an easier gear. If you feel like your legs are losing resistance, like it feels like the chain is already almost off, you need to drop it down the block a little bit. What was this other part of the question? About mountain biking. I think mountain biking, especially if you're on single track, it's very different. All bets are off there. On the trails, it's going to be, difficult, technical, steep climbs, descents. Maintain a constant cadence is basically
it's all within 100 meters. 50 meters on mountain bike trails.
It's going to be impossible. So no, that's not something I think you should aspire to on a mountain bike.
Yeah, look, this is something that I've struggled with ever since I've gotten on the bike. My cadence was naturally at about 70 when I started cycling. My old coach, Aaron, it was something we worked on together. And when I come home from a ride now, I was like, oh, Anthony, I got my cadence up to 79. My average 79. You're like, oh, that's still really, really low. But this is something that I've been working on for a long time. The one thing I will say is that you are using two different systems, right? So you're using your muscular system for really heavy cadence. I know this is quite simplified, and you're using your cardiovascular system if you're in a higher cadence. So what tires out quicker? The muscles in your legs. I mean, they're going to lose energy and deplete. Your heart and your lungs will go forever. That's kind of the way I think about it. So we kind of want to rely more on the heart-lung system. So yeah, I do find that I will have better energy if I'm cycling at a higher cadence throughout a long ride. My energy is kind of, more stable throughout the entire ride. But I do have to look at my cadence monitor on my power meter and like literally eyeball it every couple of minutes, because I still haven't gotten used to being at that higher cadence. Just before you jump in, one of the big problems at the start for me was that my bike didn't fit me properly, and I was getting really, really uncomfortable on the saddle.
I was going to say that, saddle, changing your saddle made a huge difference for you.
Huge difference. So I was staying in a much lower cadence because the pressure on my saddle was too much when I was in a higher
I find that
cadence.
on the indoor bike as well. The saddle on our indoor bike is horrible.
Yeah.
And I find my cadence is lower as a result.
Really? Okay, yeah, so there you go. So make sure and watch out for that. Really good bike fit it's just immeasurable, the advantages of getting a good bike fit. Okay, hi Anthony, love the show. That was the old question. Hey Roadman, I had a crash 2 days ago and hit my head pretty hard. I didn't lose consciousness, but I've been feeling off since then. Some headaches and dizziness. I'm worried I might have concussion. What should I look out for, and how do I know if I need to see a doctor? Also, what's the best way to handle recovery if I do have one?
Concussion is something I've regrettably had at least once. I definitely had one concussion that was like a bad concussion where I had a lot of these symptoms after it. I had a crash in the Ross, the Tour of Ireland over here. I can't even remember that much about it. I was knocked out totally, a couple of days in hospital, and I'm going to say 2 months, 3 months afterwards were really bad. I struggled to be in social situations where it was very crowded because I couldn't focus on more than one like flow of conversation. I could talk one-on-one to you, but if there was noise in the background, it was drowning out my ability to tune in and filter out other conversations. I was getting headaches on it, and these aren't symptoms unique to me. Headaches, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, sensitivity to light, blurred vision, difficulty concentrating or kind of feeling brain fog, memory problems, confusion, irritability, mood swings, sleep disturbances. Any of those, I think you need to be going to a doctor and getting proper medical advice and not getting medical advice off podcasters.
That's what I was just saying. This is from John. John, please, before you write into a podcast, there's so many, if you're in, it's very hard to get doctor's appointments. I do understand that, but you can go online and get an online appointment or something. It's really important if you're having headaches and dizziness.
Well, you could have some even more acute problems that are worse than a concussion. Concussion's more maybe something I would think about as not in the acute phase. Like you could have like a bleed on the brain, which needs to be just instantly treated, and you need to get in to get your skull drilled to relieve pressure. Concussion is something that's a longer tail to it, which is, no less like traumatic and stuff, but it's not as acute and doesn't need to be treated like instantly. I think get scanned. We are so excited to announce that we are partnering with Whoop. Whoop are changing the game when it comes to wearable technology and health monitoring. Whoop is a wearable health and fitness coach that provides you with feedback and actionable insights into your sleep, your recovery, your training, your stress, and your overall health. Sarah and I have been using Whoop for years, and we love the insights it provides into our body's inner workings. It really gives us a look under the hood. And you're going to see Mathieu van der Poel, Richard Carapaz, and other elite level cyclists wearing Whoop, but it isn't just for those superstars. All the data is personalized to your unique physiology and fitness levels. If you're interested in taking control of your health and your fitness so that you can excel in all aspects of your life, you have to go and check out Whoop. Go to the URL now, which is join.whoop.com/Roadman. I'm going to pop that in the description below, and you're going to get a free month's access to Whoop membership on me. Promise you won't regret it.
Yeah, go and get, if you hit your head at all, that's why anybody who goes to A&E who has a head injury will be seen straight away.
It's also a good way to skip the queue in A&E.
Yeah, exactly. Tell them you hit your head. There's so many as you said, long tail, effects of concussion. I mean, there's so many instances of even football players in America who, end up with serious mental health issues.
Multiple concussions, it gets worse.
It gets worse and worse and worse. So, John, please, I implore you to call I'm going to email this person back straight away and be like, don't wait till Friday till this podcast comes out.
But also, we've seen good riders. Taco van der Hoorn's back, and he won a race there only 2 days ago. Last Wednesday, he won a 1.1, and he's been off the bike with a concussion for over a year. But even closer to home on the domestic front, one of Ireland's most promising riders, Mathieu is out for almost 2 years with a concussion, and every time he gets back training he's feeling sick again, and it's massively frustrating because it's not an injury you can see where it's like, oh, he has a broken collarbone, like we know how to talk to him. Like people think you've just lost it or you've gone soft or it's passed you by, but it's like, actually I'm struggling with something you can't see, which is a lot harder for the athlete.
I totally agree. Okay, next question. Hi Anthony, love the show. I was watching Worlds at the weekend and saw that Michael Woods was caught on camera eating from a Tupperware container. I saw in the media after that it was bicarbonate gel. What's the benefit of this? Is it something a Cat2 36-year-old racer should consider? I have to admit I never even heard of it before, and that's from Miles.
The video, as you say, caught Michael Woods. It's not like he was trying to hide it. The video showed Michael Woods early in the race eating from a Tupperware container. Everyone online thought he was eating porridge. Yeah. They thought he was eating oats because it's such a long race. They're like, Woodsy's after skipping breakfast. And he's at the back, wouldn't be known for his bike handling either, with 2 hands off the bars, eating from a Tupperware container with a spoon. But it's bicarbonate gel from Morton is what he's eating, and it buffers lactate. The problem is it only lasts for 5 hours, and with the race being so long, he couldn't have it on the bus like you normally would before. I've used it on the track in the past. You'd use like really crude bicarbonate soda like you'd use for bacon, and it wrecks your stomach.
You just have it in a pasted up, or just
like
take a
few
spoonful
different
of
ways.
it, put it in
you
a
can
drink.
put a spoon, mix it up into drink, knock it back. You can microdose it or you can macrodose. Like macrodose, take a big chunk of it on the day of competition, or you can take smaller amounts leading up to the competition. Track pursuiters and stuff have used it for a long time. Time trialists have used it for a long time, but it's horrible on your gastro tract. Like a lot of people get the shits from taking it. So roadies haven't typically used it because your event isn't like, if it's 5-6 hours, you might need to stop for a shit, which is, more than offsetting the benefit of it.
Yeah.
But how it kind of works is it neutralizes the hydrogen ions that are produced during high intensity exercise, and that can help reducing the buildup of lactate in the muscles, delaying the onset of fatigue. And it's especially beneficial, this is from Morton's website, for short, intense bursts of exercise, such as during climbs or sprints where acid accumulation can rapidly impair performance.
So would you take this just before you're going on track? Like, does it start working immediately?
I used to take it the morning of.
If you'd a race a couple of hours later, and it would kind of have kicked in at that stage and it'll last for 5 hours.
I haven't used this Morton one. It's like a weird jelly paste stuff, and they're saying that it doesn't have the same gastro problems as just using the old baking soda stuff, but it's also not cheap. So it's like a 36-year-old. I read that and I'm like, 36, geez, he's a bit old for that. Then I'm like, wait, he's way younger than I am. So it's like,
what age are you in your head? 21.
So I don't know, give it a blast and see. Try it out, train it first.
Why not try it? Yeah,
what's
absolutely.
The worst that can happen? You shit yourself.
Okay, next question. Hey, Roadman crew. I'll be watching the Gravel World Champs in Belgium this weekend and was blown away by the intensity of the racing last year. What should we as amateur gravel riders learn from how the pros handle such a technical and tough course?
Before I answer this, something we were talking about last weekend for the World Road Race. It would be cool, we're obviously based in Dublin, it would be cool to get a venue in Dublin to do like watch parties for this stuff.
That would
like
be so good.
For cyclocross, all the classics, like everyone's just watching the races at home on their own. Like you do your group ride and then we came home and watch it on the couch, and I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast tuned into the Worlds last week. So if anyone has an idea for a cool venue in Dublin that we could do a watch party, let us know.
Yeah, for the classics, even when they kind of kick off, that would be amazing. This listener said that what should we as amateur gravel riders learn from how the pros handle such a technical and tough course? I don't know about that. I've had a little look at the course, and a lot of the organisers saying it's 60% gravel, but a lot of the American pro gravel riders have decided not to come. First of all, because they were told that they would have to self-fund it, so they're not going to.
Because they got annihilated last year.
They said they're going to self-fund it, but also they said that the course is set up for roadies and is only half gravel, so they wouldn't be attending. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, look, the gravel pros. Look, I'm a huge fan of what gravel pros have done in carving out this new niche, and like I've given them so much airtime in the podcast, and I'll continue to do it. But also, we can't confuse like who the real best athletes in the world
exactly.
are. They're World Tour riders.
If you look at last year's winners, we had Cassia Niewiadoma, who won the Tour de France Femme this year, and we had Matej Mohoric, who is like an extremely powerful road racer.
And we had Keegan Swenson, the very, very best,
top level,
dominant US gravel rider, like untouchable on the US scene. And he goes to the line with Alejandro Valverde, who's retired 4 years, and he gets beaten. So it's like, Valverde can't cut it in the World Tour anymore. Like, he's 4 years retired. He's smoking cigars at home, I'm sure, and he's still beating Swenson. Not take away from Swenson, he's an amazing rider, but the World Tour guys they're the creme de la creme, like they're the 1% of the 1%. Roadman, I'm going to date myself here, but I've been riding the bike for almost 20 years. And in that time, I've cycled through every cycling apparel brand out there. And I kept swapping out different apparel brands each season until I found Le Col. There's something really different about Le Col, and as soon as you slip into the gear, you notice it feels different. It feels better. I've had the pleasure of chatting with Janto Barker on the podcast. He's the Le Col founder, and his dedication to crafting the fastest, most refined cycling apparel out there, it's nothing short of inspiring. Janto isn't just trying to create gear. I get the feeling he's actively and obsessively trying to perfect perfect cycling gear. Trust me, as soon as you slip on the Lacoste kit, as soon as you zip up that jersey, you can feel that commitment. The proof for Lacoste, it's in the pudding. This is the same kit that Jay Hindley wore when he clinched overall victory in the Giro d'Italia. There's a confidence that comes with wearing apparel that's been battle tested and podium proven in races like the Giro d'Italia. Trust me, feeling good on the bike means you're going to perform better. If you have a second, I highly advise you to jump on over to lacoste.cc and check out their amazing range of kit and experience this feeling for yourself.
Do you agree with the USA kind of saying that, these UCI gravel routes, especially in the Worlds, are not set up as gravel rides like they would be in America, where you have these massive 200, 300 kilometer races and it's all gravel. There's no asphalt whatsoever. So they're kind of intimating there that they think that these Worlds are set up for the roadies to win them.
Yeah, I haven't seen the start list, but if you it's going to be very hard to beat the likes of Van der Poel.
But if you think about the road racers that go to Unbound, like Mathieu went to Unbound this year and he had a DNF because he had a mechanical. Yeah. So it's kind of, I think the gravel world should be held on a route that is a little bit more gravelly and isn't 50% road. But that's just my thoughts.
It's like also UCI, do they need to be in gravel? It's like, I don't know, it's a whole different debate.
But that's kind of what they did years ago with cyclocross, isn't it? They let cyclocross become, quite big and quite a cult following, and then decided to really muscle in on it. And it seems like gravel is kind of going that way.
Lifetime Grand Prix is all the coolest gravel races.
Yeah, agreed.
I love the guys at Lifetime as well. They're doing an amazing job, and I must get Chemo back on the podcast to see what else they have up their sleeve for next season. But yeah, I don't think UCI and gravel need to be a thing. Just if you're gonna, especially if they're going to design a course for the roadies to win, there needs to be, the only way the gravel guys like Swenson, Alexi Vermeulen, Dylan Johnson, how they can beat the roadies is none of those lads would be in the World Tour right now. They need an element of chance in it, like Unbound, where you can take Mohoric out of the game, and chance married with the experience they have racing on that gives them an extra. And that's kind of goes to answering this guy's question: what can the amateurs learn from the pros? Like, if you look at those top gravel racers, they're so tuned in, and this is where they have the advantage from even the World Tour roadies. They're so tuned into the conditions of the course, tire choices, tire widths, tire grip, tire pressure. They're so tuned into that, and they get tuned into that by diligently and meticulously pre-riding the courses, so they know every section of the course. They're also going to know where they're fueling, how much they're fueling. Fuel stops are like Formula One stops for these guys, so they're practicing that as well. Every aspect of their bike is going to be dialed. Like, if you follow Dylan Johnson's YouTube channel, which is brilliant, he's constantly taking his felt carbon bike apart and he's putting new forks on it, new handlebars on it. The World Tour guys don't do this. They just give the bike to the mechanic to get it back. They might change their cassette on the back. Roubaix might have a special setup, but every race is a special bike setup for these. Amateurs obviously aren't going to drop the same cash that the pros are on equipment, but I think you can just be more dialed in and cognizant rather than just showing up to the race and thinking it's a race, it's another race. Each gravel event is totally unique, and by preparing for it and having a plan and executing on that plan, you give yourself a good bit of an edge on the competition.
I will definitely be tuning in because I'm not ready for cycling racing to be over for the season. Lasha Kopecky is going to be racing. It's her first ever gravel race. She's never done a gravel race ever. She probably will win. She's just the new world champ, so it'd be great to see her racing. And apparently there's one wild card spot being kept for Mathieu van der Poel on the Dutch Gravel Worlds team. That Lawrence Tandam is
Lawrence manager starting last week.
Yeah, so he's going to be on the podcast in a couple of weeks. We'll be releasing that one, but he is rider manager, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes. Lawrence Tandam can certainly
he's riding as well, as I didn't know.
He's riding
just manager.
Well.
He's in good shape. A good chat with him about the Tour Divide. And just don't do it was basically his message. Or definitely don't try and do Lachlan's time on it, because he just fell apart completely. I think that's all our questions for today.
That's it for today.
Roadman, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, you can check out last week's episode of Rider Support, where we talk about Lachlan Morton and his potential round the world record, and that's up here. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. As Sarah said, a Lawrence Tandam episode is coming up, plus we've loads more amazing stuff coming up down here to subscribe. Talk next day.